Okay, we're going to reconvene in the district meeting here. No action was taken in closed session. Let's stand for the pledge of allegiance, please. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion? So there was a request to pull the world language presentation.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with pulling the world language department presentation.
And it was also the field trip.
And pulling the
Postponed. The one field trip.
and pulling 13D field trips.
Second.
Do you want to move 17A? I think that is why Mr. Gordon really is here to speak, and pull that to the front.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't have to stay here all night long.
Right.
Okay, I will redo my motion to approve the agenda pulling 9E, the world language department presentation, pulling 13D, the field trips, and then moving 17A, the proclamation, to the beginning. The beginning of the agenda?
Right, special presentation.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So we're going to move special presentation. Yeah. And that would be Jeff, right?
So, Gordon? Yeah, at this point, we'd like to talk about the proclamation that you had proposed.
Okay, I was waiting for time. Okay. Gordon Clay, Chair of the Curry County Suicide Awareness and Prevention Council, Brookings, Oregon. Question, what are boys less likely to do than girls? Many things. Boys are brought up to be tough in a culture to stuff their feelings. Boys don't cry, handle it, don't ask for help, man up. And the messages go on. So when it comes to self-injury, they go numb. Why should we be concerned? People often keep it a secret, but the urge to self-injure isn't uncommon. Over 2 million Americans currently engage in self-injury. While the target groups are adolescents and young adults, people of all ages self-injure. Myth. One of the misconceptions is that only females do it. While girls 14 to 17 are hospitalized 4 times as often as boys, 30 to 40% of people who self-injure are males, with the highest segment being white adolescent males. Self-injury means hurting yourself on purpose. For boys, the most common method is hitting themselves or an object like a wall or cigarette burns. For most common among girls is cutting with a sharp object or pulling out hair or picking at wounds to prevent healing. Myth. People who self-injure enjoy the pain and can't feel it. Self-injury most often hurts. Sometimes the feeling of pain is the whole point, to reconnect with their own body or just to feel something. Myth. Self-injury is untreatable. Although it can be difficult to control or stop, most people are able to stop at some point. Because it is most often used as a coping mechanism, however, the practice typically does not stop until the individual has other means to cope and is fully ready to stop. Myth. Self-injury is a suicide attempt. Most studies find that self-injury is often undertaken as a means of avoiding suicide. What is important is to get a handle on it before the pattern gets well established, since 70% of those with a history of self-injury have attempted suicide at least once. Myth: there's nothing I can do. There are many ways you can help. The easiest is by listening and being as supportive and understanding as you can. Most importantly is don't give up. Instead of scolding or looking down on someone for doing this, just let them know you care. March is Self-Injury Awareness Month, so take this time to learn more at zeroattempts.org/selfinjury.html. If you or someone you care about is in crisis and you think immediate action is needed, text SOS to 741-741, contact your doctor or mental health crisis service, or go to your local emergency room. A lot of kids in both Del Norte County and Curry County are self-injuring, and this is the month to really bring it to our awareness and end as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. So my recommendation would be to approve the proclamation, and then at that point, we'll get information out to our counseling staff, we'll get information posted on the website.
I'll move, make a
Questions?
motion to approve.
All right, all in favor? Aye. No opposed? Okay, next special, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon. Next special presentation, poetry out loud presentation, Kelly Turner.
I hope that you are ready to be inspired tonight, because I have two young men I would like to introduce you to. Go ahead and come up here. Alex Armstrong, Del Norte County's champion, and Noah Del Norte County runner-up and Sunset champion. Sunset has many things to be proud of, and these two fine young men have taken academic risks, and they have achieved amazing feats that have blown us all out of the water. One of the most notable things about these two is the relationship that they have developed with each other as they have supported each other along the way. All the way up to the county competition, when at the very last minute they found out they had to compete against each other, which was a huge surprise, and they both did an amazing job. Now, this weekend, we had an event planned. The California State Poetry Out Loud Finals was planned for Sacramento, and unfortunately, because of the current state of things, it's now going to be a virtual event. So the competition is still on. Alex is still representing Del Norte County, and we are currently working on producing 3 incredible videos. And tonight, what we want to do is share with you the 3 poems that he is delivering to the State California Arts Council. So without any further ado, Noah and I are going to step aside and give Alex the stage.
I'll be performing In School Days by John Greenleaf Whittier. Still sits the schoolhouse by the road, a ragged beggar sleeping. Around it, still, the sumacs grow, and blackberry vines are creeping. Within, the master's desk is seen, deep scarred by raps of visual. The warping floor, the battered seats, the jackknifes carved initial. The charcoal frescoes on its wall, its doors worn sill, betraying the feet that, creeping slow to school, went storming out to playing. Long years ago, a winter sun shone over it at setting, lit up its western window panes in low eaves icy fretting. It touched the tangled golden curls and brown eyes full of grieving of one who still, her steps delayed when all the school were leaving. For near her stood the little boy, her childish favor singled, his cap pulled low upon a face where pride and shame were mingled. pushing with restless feet the snow. To right and left, he lingered, as restlessly her tiny hands the blue-checked apron fingered. He saw her lift her eyes, he felt the soft hands-like caressing, and heard the tremble of her voice, as if a fault confessing. I'm sorry that I spelt the word, I hate to go above you, because the brown eyes lower fell, because, you see, I love you. Still memory to a gray-haired man, that sweet child face is showing. Dear girl, the grasses on her grave have 40 years been growing. He lives to learn in life's hard school, how few who pass above him lament their triumph and his loss, like her, because they love him. Thank you. Now I'll be performing In Flanders Fields by John McRae. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below, we are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high, if ye break faith with us who die. We shall not sleep, the poppies grow in Flanders Fields. Thank you. Now it's Common Dust by Georgia Douglas Johnson. And who shall separate the dust? What later we shall be, whose keys from I will scan and solve the mystery. The high, the low, the rich, the poor, the black, the white, the red, and all the chromatic between, of whom shall it be said? Here lies the dust of Africa, here are the sons of Rome. Here lies the one unlabeled, the world at large is home. Can one then separate the dust? Will mankind lie apart? When life has settled back again, the same as from the start. Thank you.
I want to know how you do that, because I can sometimes have a hard time remembering my social security number. And that's an amazing mind.
I just have to practice.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of hard work.
Weeks and weeks of practicing over and over again.
It's amazing. Well done. It's impressive.
And Alex is totally ready to take state and head to finals. So let's cheer him on. So over the top proud.
So how are you going to do the virtual poetry, and what do you do? Just film it and submit it?
Well, that's the big question, right? How do we adapt? And what the California Arts Council's primary goal is to facilitate an equitable contest so that California can send a contestant to nationals. So they were thinking about doing a video call-in and giving all of the 52 to 3 participants a time period. But because of technology issues, they're asking us to provide recorded videos. So tomorrow we're going to go out on Sunset's interpretive trail in the redwoods out there, and we're going to see if we can't take Del Norte to Sacramento.
Yes.
That's right. That's right.
Good, because we've got Ryan and Michael and stuff. Is it, you need any help from them? We'd be happy to do whatever we can.
Thank you, and thank you also for your generous support of this program, of our students, and especially for academic risk-taking and achievement. We really appreciate it.
Excellent.
Great
Excellent.
job.
Well done.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to item 9B, facilities funding, voter survey invitation. Mr. John,
Afternoon. I was so hoping not to have to follow. That's so much better than what I'm going to be sounding like. Hopefully the content of what I share might evoke some passion, but it's tough to get too excited about bonds unless you're like myself and you do this for a living. Before I jump into this, just to kind of give some context as to the reason that I'm here tonight, the last time I was in front of the board was back in the summer, back in August. And at that point in time, we discussed doing our final financing, meaning sell the remaining bonds from the 2008 election. And we also were talking about doing a refunding and saving property taxpayers money. And we ultimately did both. We finished the authorization, so all of the new money that was authorized back in 2008 is gone. We were also able to achieve that refunding and save property taxes over $1.5 million. So that was a big day, I think, for the district. That spurred the next part of the discussion, which is, okay, well, we still have facilities needs. We got a lot of our priority projects done, but we still have other priorities and we still have other needs. So what do districts do? And the answer was, well, the only way that districts improve facilities is they can get money from the state of California that requires a local match. They can get money from developers in the areas that see significant development. And then you get money through local general obligation bonds. And ultimately, the direction back to us was, hey, since we're out of money, since we've sold all of the money, let's explore and see whether or not the community here would be willing to support another bond measure to continue the renovation, upgrade, modernization of your facilities. Both of benefit educationally, from a financial perspective, from the general fund, there's obviously benefits. Even though the money can't go for operations, bond dollars can pay for things that normally come out of the general fund, be it technology or electrical or deferred maintenance projects. So we were given that task, is to say, come back to us and help us assess the feasibility of perhaps considering a bond in 2020. And so that's what this is tonight. This is an opportunity to take you through and provide you with some statistics, some data as to whether or not this community would be willing to support you. At this moment in time, things change obviously, but at this moment in time, that's what I'm going to report on tonight. So I'm going to take you through the presentation, a little bit about the methodology. So the next slide here, you've got about 15,000 registered voters in the district. And the goal here is to test a number of things. We wanted to test attitudes towards the district, attitudes towards specific projects that you guys are looking to improve, attitudes towards tax rates. Are you okay with this tax rate? What about that tax rate? And ultimately, the fundamental question is, would you be willing to support a bond measure at all? So we conducted the survey March, you can see the dates there, March 5th through the 10th. In order to be called, one, you had to have a phone number that you had to have access to. Two, you had to pick up the phone. And I know some folks that said, oh, I was getting this call, and I said, that was us, why didn't you pick up the phone? Three, you had to be a registered voter, and four, you had to be a likely voter. Some people are voters, they've been registered for 10 years and they've never voted, so we don't include them in that sample size. So the goal is to get a good size sample. We were pleased with the results that we got. We had about 260 households that participated in the survey. Anyone who participated knew that it was not a short survey. It did take a fair amount of time, but it was invaluable information, I think, for you guys to get information. Yeah?
How did you contact them?
By telephone. Random sample telephone.
Random? Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, and the reason for that is you want it to be random.
Landlines?
Landlines or cell phones.
Yeah, I got one and I knew what it was and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't want to be screw up this survey.
You should have done it. You're
like, I don't understand.
So you would adjust
yeah. So it's anyone who would answer the phone. The reason we don't do like a survey monkey or say, hey, go log on to the website and fill it out is because then you're getting a group of voters that might be slanted towards parents or teachers, like, well, I'm interested in education, let me participate, and that may not be reflective of your voters in the community. So we really want to reach into people's living rooms across all demographics, and that's what this represents. It covers renters, homeowners, young, old, Dems, Republicans, okay? So let's look at some of the data, and I'm not going to go through and speak to each percentage, but I want to give you guys some context, I want to give you some specifics, and I'll pick out some highlights and some lowlights. For those that did participate, this survey is a summary of the presentation and a survey of the question, a summary of the survey questionnaire. It doesn't follow word for word. It doesn't follow question for question. So we took all the information and then we said, all right, this is easy to follow along, so we put the presentation together this way. All right, out of the gate though, we did say, hey, things in Norte County, right direction, wrong direction. Half the people say right direction, a third say wrong, and some say they don't know. Then we wanted to get specific to you. How would you rate the quality of education? 34, almost 2/3 of the people say good, fair to good. You've got, 24%, or almost a quarter of your folks feel it's poor, or very poor. We also wanted to make sure that we weren't, and this is to my point earlier about doing the random sampling and the telephones, is we didn't want to have something that was skewed towards people that had a connection. So in that bottom left-hand corner, if you have children or grandchildren, about a third currently, 1 out of 5 in the past, but almost half the people that participate have no ties to the school district. Again, that's what we want. We want it to be representative of all of your voters. We had some specific questions about just kind of themes of good schools improve property values in this community. Yep, they see a correlation to do that. The right point is an important one because most people feel the state is failing our kids, but does that mean you should do something locally? And in this district, about 3 out of 4 people say, yeah, I think that's something that we should do locally. Kind of an ideological question, if you will, is I'd never vote for a tax increase no matter what the money would be used for. Okay, in this case, 28%. So about 3 out of the 10 voters are just like, hey, I'm just hardcore, I don't care what the money would be used for, don't ask me. But the balance, 2/3 or so of the folks said, it depends what it's got to be for. The next question is one of the critical questions, one of the important questions. We call this the pre-benchmark, because what this question tests is any detailed information. We read in the 75-word run-on sentence, which is what the ballot language sentence is, and I won't read it for the audience here, but basically, to fix up our schools, issue $36 million of bonds and a bunch of legalese. Shall we approve this bond measure or not? We ask the question, if the election were held today, would you vote yes to approve or no to disapprove? Now keep in mind, throughout, we should be mindful of 55%. 55% is what the district needs to achieve in order to see a successful election. And it's not 55% of registered voters, it's 55% of the votes cast on the measure that you need to have in the yes camp. Okay? So you could have 10,000 people vote, you need 5,500 to say yes. You could have 10,000 people vote, but only 9,000 vote on the measure, 1,000 say, I'm just not going to vote on it. Well, in that case, we need whatever the math is, 4,700 yes. Okay? So it's 55%, so that's why these figures are relevant and we want some context. So you've got about, not quite half of the people said, yeah, if the election were held today, I'd vote yes. You've got about 40% plus that would say, hey, I'd vote no, and then there's a small group of undecideds. Okay? We want to be in the 55% or above category, but we also want to get an accurate read of this district. So then the next couple of slides, we say, all right, let me start filling in some blanks. Let me start telling you how we would spend the money. Let me see if I can educate you, and then we're going to come back to that benchmark question. So we ask all these questions. Would you be more likely or less likely to support it if you knew the money would be used for this or that? And we've taken through all of it. Red and yellow combined, that's kind of the more likely. Good news, as it relates to this particular slide, that basically you've got near 60% or above support for all of these types of things. So would you be roofs? Yes. Science labs, of course. Health and safety, plumbing, sewer, energy efficiency, and adequate electrical systems? Yes, yes, and yes. The only oddball one, honestly, that kind of sticks out to me is the make health and safety improvements. Doesn't have as much support as some of the others. But I bet you, that if this question was asked today, for example, the numbers would change dramatically. So this, again, is a snapshot in time, and this would have been this March 5th to March 10th window. But the good news is, voters are supportive of the kinds of projects you wanted to propose on this slide. Next one. We get a little bit more detail. We say, okay, HVAC. How about auditoriums, libraries, cafeterias, and other student support facilities? Security, computer access, and then just in general, modernize and renovate. Also, encouragingly, all of these enjoy greater than 55% support. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that you're not proposing anything crazy. You're not saying, hey, we want to do gold-plated swimming pools and this, that, and the other, but it's just brick and mortar kinds of improvements that any of you guys that know your facilities, be it the teachers, the staff, or you guys, you know is what's needed here. So the voters tend to agree, whether they're familiar with the facilities or not, they tend to agree that, yeah, I'd be willing to support these kinds of projects. Next slide. Continuing on. And we organize this a little bit in best support down to kind of the least support. So windows, sure. PE fields and facilities, getting a little colder. Student drop off and pick up, playgrounds, and then getting rid of the temporary portable classrooms and have the least amount of support. And yet, even with that, you're still around that 55% area. So oftentimes we get asked the question, so is there some projects that we shouldn't include? And based on this data here, the answer would be no. However, sometimes the question is, based on my budget limitations, are there projects that we shouldn't include? And this is where you can refer to this and say, you know what? If you're on a limited budget, I probably would leave the portable classrooms. I probably wouldn't worry about playgrounds and play fields, the student drop-off areas, at least as prioritized by the voters. Okay? Doesn't mean you have to adhere to this. This is just information. It gives you some direction of, hey, if I want to give to the voters what they want, then these are the things that they are less inclined. So across the board, if you have an unlimited budget, all projects are good. If you have a limited budget, that's where we get to some of the next slides, then you might use this for some prioritization. So let's talk about tax tolerances. So we want to ask folks, well, what if it was going to cost you this much? And let me explain it to you. And we actually asked it two different ways. So SSA stands for split sample. That means half the voters received one version of the survey that asked the question on $1 per year. And the SSB is of assessed value. 51% support, 43% no. Some tax sensitivity there a little bit. And it didn't really change much if we asked it on a monthly. So then if you said no to 60, we said, all right, let's try on $49 and $4 a month. $49 gets you a little bit more support than the 60. The $4 a month didn't seem to change people's attitudes, again, on that series, that split sample B. And again, if you were a no voter for that, we said, how about the next tax? And if you were a yes voter, we just skipped you, right? If you're good at 60, of course you're going to be good at the other tax. So we say 42. All right, a little bit more support. I think what's interesting to note there is the 55% and yet the SSB, which I almost would say is probably just a little bit more of a conservative sample because that doesn't seem to move as much, didn't change as much. But you get the idea. The lower the tax rate you go, the greater the support. And then I think finally we've got $36 a year, and now the support's great, above the 55% at the $36 per year. The $3 you're still around that low 50%. So oftentimes we get asked the question, well, so does that mean I should go for just the $36 or $42? Like, what's the right amount? And the answer is, you don't have to have a hard, fast rule and say, if you didn't get above $55, don't ask for it. But it is an important guideline. And it is important in our experience to say to voters, you know what, if you don't want to pay $60, but you're willing to pay $48 or $42 or $36, thank you for your generosity. Because 60% is bigger than zero, or 80% is bigger than zero. And I think in a lot of cases, districts pass these measures, they are good stewards with the tax dollars, and then they go back to voters and say, hey, remember me, 12 years ago, we asked for this, we got a lot of these projects done, we're back, what do you think? And then maybe another 10 or 12 or 15 years from now, that same request will happen. So, don't, I don't want this to be just complete black and white. It's like, oh, if it's not 55%, there's no chance. If it is above, great news. If it's below, bad news. There is some nuances in this. This is a very important slide. It's maybe the most important slide when it's all said and done. And that's a post-benchmark. So up until this point in time, someone's been on the phone probably 8, 9, 10 minutes maybe answering these questions. But now they have a pretty good idea of, okay, these are the kinds of projects they're thinking about. Oh, this is kind of the range of taxes they're talking about. I feel a little bit more educated on the topic, and so we asked this question. Now that you've heard more information, how would you vote? And the support goes up, so does the opposition, right? Having a little bit more of a clear path gives people a little better idea of what all is being discussed. So again, not at the 55%, so one would say, well, that's not great news. You know, you want to be at 55 or 60 or above there. But this gives you, again, a pretty good read of voters' mindsets during that time period. So what does this all mean? It's a good question. When it's all said and done, the district has good support for projects. You have some tax sensitivities for certain, and there is a question as to whether or not the district could pass a measure. Okay? If you don't go in November of 2020, that's fine. But then the next available date for the district is 2022. So California allows districts to go every other year on a regularly scheduled election. So if you don't go during the presidential general, your next option would be the gubernatorial primary, June in 2022. So in your mind, if you're kind of forecasting out, okay, well, how soon would we get facility improvements done? How soon could we provide some general fund relief? You know, you go in November, you're a year, 18 months out. If you go in 2022, you're 3 to 4 years out. But again, you shouldn't go unless there's support in the community. So what's our advice? Our advice is really pretty simple. Well, first, before I give the advice, I want to say this one thing. I would say that anyone who followed the election, Prop 13 was on the ballot. Prop 13 failed, in some places spectacularly. It was a huge surprise to us how few people understood what this Prop 13 is about. And there's data. There's been a dozen school bonds, statewide school bonds on the ballot. Every single statewide school bond has passed, and passed overwhelmingly, except all the way back to 1994. So did voters all of a sudden have a big paradigm shift, attitude change? They didn't, because 4 years ago they approved Prop 51, which is a statewide school bond, and they approved it overwhelmingly. But there was so much confusion that Prop 13 was going to attack the old Prop 13 that everybody voted no. And a lot of school bonds failed. A huge percentage of school bonds failed because of that. Just one other data point. 85% of all school bonds that have ever been attempted in the last 20 years pass. 85%. March of 2020, it was less than 30. The worst before that was a 62% back in June of 2006, meaning 6 out of 10 bonds passed on the worst performance. Normally it's 8, 9 out of 10 passed. We're at less than 3 out of 10 because of Prop 13. So grain of salt here with some of that data. I do suspect that you probably would have had a little bit higher levels of support if not for a little bit of this residual Prop 13 anti-attack my property taxes on the brain. However, Del Norte County, my understanding in working with this district for the last 12 plus years, you're a conservative community, you're a conservative district, and this data, we shouldn't ignore it at all. In order to proceed, if the district has any chance, the district needs to get key stakeholders lined up behind it. So if you think, oh, well, we'll just throw it out there and we'll run a really good campaign, it's not going to pass. You got to get your elected officials, you got to get your businesses, you got to get your teachers, parents, staff members. You really have to have kind of a broad coalition of support of people to say, yes, we need this in Del Norte County, this needs to be done, and we're willing to get behind you to see it be done. If you don't have that survey data, even with the Prop 13, influence, if you will, is not going to pass. So I wouldn't say don't go at this point. I would say I would take the next 6 months and say, all right, let's see if we can get support from those key stakeholder groups. And if you do, then I think you could overcome what I would say a marginal survey. If you can't, then reset to 2022, and just wait, the next 3.5, 4 years before you can start, making those facility improvements again. Wish I could give you, better news, but I just want to be straightforward and candid and honest with the district's situation as it stands right now. So, happy to take questions. Sure, there's a lot.
Questions from the board?
I have a question. You've done this a lot. When districts have these kind of percentages and they do go out, what is the general result?
It's a good question. It depends on whether or not the district gets that coalition of support. If the district doesn't have the coalition of support, we just say don't go. The last time we had results like this, probably Yosemite Unified School District, and we said don't go, because at that point in time they couldn't muster up that level of support. I think in another scenario in Shasta County, Anderson High School District had similar results. We actually said you should wait for a presidential election, because districts tend to do better with the presidential, just a bigger turnout, more reflective of your voters. Because they wanted to go in a gubernatorial, and we said, hey, wait. And but they did have that coalition, and they passed. They got 57%. So, but I just want to be explicitly clear that it doesn't pass unless you can check the box and say we've got the support from these individuals in these key groups. Because they're going to have to change a little bit of the minds of those undecideds and even some of the folks that were currently in the no category.
What would our timeline be in terms of making a decision?
Well, that's the good news, is that the deadline to submit the resolution adopted by you that would stipulate and lay out the plan, what's the tax rate, what are the projects, how big is the bond, or small is the bond, needs to be submitted to the county registrar of voters April 7th.
April 7th.
Excuse me, August, someone, right?
Okay.
Someone yeah, the good news is you have 2 weeks. No, thank you. August 7th. It's 88 days. It's 88 days before Election Day. So it's August 7th. So that gives you, not a ton of time, but for the good news about a district of your size, between April, May, June, and July, you should be able to have those conversations with the parties that you need to have those conversations with. And it should be clear. It should be like, yeah, everyone's lining up behind us and says, let's go. Or, boy, we just don't have it. But then, at least as a district, you can go to the community when people say, our schools are dumps, we don't have this, we don't have that. It's like, hey, look, we tried. We did our part. We did a survey. We reached out. We had these conversations. And if you guys say no and you want to, live or teach or send your kids to these kinds of schools, then that's your choice. But you've done your part.
So here, when you're saying $60 a year, $49 a year, so the $60 a year would be for the 36 million, and then we start going down from there?
Correct.
Is that what that reflects?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
What was the percentage of going from the 60 down to that? Like, how many answered the 60? How of those that said no, how many went to the 49? Like, do you have that progression of data?
I don't hear, but I mean, I could look that up. I mean, what this counts, if someone says, like I said, yes to the 60, right? And let's just say that's 100 people said yes to that, so we drop them off, and then you get to the 49. And then from there we get 10 people of the remaining that says yeah. So now I have 110. So we're just adding the incremental to that, but I don't have that handy.
We can kind of figure it out from the percentages though, right?
Yeah, you could probably back into it.
So I just want to make sure that just in general, because I'm new, that I understand how this works. So we are asking to basically be able to borrow money to make these school improvements that will be repaid through property tax. That's how that works.
Yes.
Okay. So this is similar to, I think it was Measure A,
Yes.
and that Measure A money is now gone, is that correct?
Correct.
25 million.
Okay, and so we have projects that we can say, look what happened last time, we want to do more. So that's basically what we're doing, is we're
Yes.
saying we do need to do more.
Correct.
Thank you.
And just for context, we work with a lot of districts, passed 140 bonds in the last 2 years, all over the state. Just this last March, 118 school districts went to voters, 118, which is like 15% of the whole state. I would venture in November, you're probably gonna have another 150 to 200 that go. This is how school districts fix up their facilities. And it's a departure from the 60s and 70s where the board says, hey, I need new money to build a school. Property tax collector, go levy a tax. And all of a sudden people looked at their property tax and go, whoa, where'd this come from? The original Prop 13 happened, and they took the power away from the board in setting that tax and actually gave it to the voters. You have the power to give them the chance to ask or answer the question, but it's the voters who decide. So what they approve is that 75-word contract, which is you can tax me or you can tax the property owners of this community if you do these kinds of facility improvements, and I authorize you up to $36 million. But once you've spent the $36 million, then that authorization is gone.
So the money that was being levied for Measure A has now come off their tax bills, is that?
No,
Not
that's,
yet.
no, so bonds are like a home loan.
Oh, I'm sorry, so we're still paying it off?
Correct.
Okay, so this would be on top of what's already.
Correct.
Okay.
And just that context, and I don't advocate, and I know you're not the Bay Area, but some districts are on their 6th or 7th bond. Most are on their 3rd. So again, just that context. Even, some of your neighbors, if you say, oh, how many has Shasta High School done? Or how many is Reading Elementary? Or how about, Arcata, Eureka, or some of these other districts? Most of those districts have done 2 or 3 bonds. Just because that's, the state says these are the rules. If you want some money, come up with a local match and we'll give you some money. But each community gets to decide, and some say, no thanks, we're content with what we have.
So you took this survey when things were looking good. Let's say if you were to
No,
retake
things
this.
were looking bad.
Things were looking bad.
I would say things were looking bad.
Well, with the market crashing the way it is,
Yeah, the market that I think had begun to crash, but yeah, things are maybe looking worse. But the Proctor, maybe, I know, they just canceled March Madness, I'm sad. But Prop 13, the Prop 13 effect, just to give you like how much analysis we put into it, we factored or figured that there was about a 12% hit to districts because of that Prop 13 issue. I mean, Lassen County, 18% of the voters in Lassen County approved Prop 13. Prop 51, it was like 50%. Again, these are just major, major changes because of this view that it was going to affect rates. So if you figure a 12% hit, meaning take your success rate or failure rate, add 12%, and a lot of these districts would have passed. I don't know that I'd say, hey, let's just add 12% to you, but there is some Prop 13 factor. But conversely, to your point, yeah, things are worse, and people may feel a little bit differently about it as well.
yeah. Any other questions?
Of the 118, because there's a lot of local bonds, how many, I don't know if you could, how many were you advised on?
47.
47 of those 118.
Judah, you have a question back there?
I just knowing a little bit about the survey, is the school board going to be receiving the survey in its entirety and those responses, and will that be published for the public as well? Because here, when I look at the board agenda, what you're showing is what's on the board agenda, and I'm aware that there were more questions asked, and I think that it'd be nice for the public to see those as well.
Okay, yeah. I mean, this is just a summary. There's cross tabulations. There's a lot more, in-depth detail that I'm happy to provide.
Because there are other questions that weren't even touched upon.
Mr. Little?
Were you able to look at any data or information from the 2008 bill bond that was passed locally? Is that something you could retrieve and?
You're saying like old survey results?
Survey
What kind of
results
data?
and what, like how many people voted,
Yeah, all of that information.
stakeholders involved?
Yeah, all that information is available. The district probably would have to dig up into some of the old boxes to find out, who were the stakeholders that supported it and endorsed it, because that would have been part of the campaign at the time, is to say, hey, let's get county supervisor so-and-so, and let's get, mayor so-and-so in the Chamber of Commerce, et cetera, et cetera. My recollection, having been involved in that 2008, was that the district got pretty broad support, but I would encourage the district to pull out the old Measure A box of former mailers and that sort of information to get a sense of, where you were then and where you are now. I mean, I don't want to put a lot of weight on the 2008, because that was 12 years ago, and so much does change, and that's why we do these surveys instead of just say, hey, you passed one in 2008, let's put something on here. But that's why you do these surveys, because there's issues at play, there's political, financial, and legal, and other things that influence how people view these things. And so we want to make sure we're getting kind of latest and greatest data. Some districts go so far as to do a tracking poll. They'll say, okay, good, thanks for the survey. Come back to me in May, do a little mini survey, and I want to see if things change. If coronavirus calms down, if whatever local issue calms down, let's see if things and attitude change. That the whole Prop 13 effect calms down. So a lot of districts are going to be taking multiple stabs at this.
I think some of the data that he might be talking about that I'm interested in is what was the polling data in 2008 before they put Measure A on the ballot versus what's the polling data now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have that survey. I would imagine that the district would have it somewhere in its archives, because that would have been a survey that was conducted on behalf of the district. That was when I worked at a private company, so they have those documents. But the district should be able to look that up.
I kind of remember that, because I was here and I was doing the phone banks and doing the a poster and running around, and it passed pretty comfortably. I think it was. I'm just comfortably here is probably high 50s. I think is what you got. Berkeley's comfortably. They got 84%. That's what I meant. For us, it was pretty good. Good question. Oh, there you go, Mary.
And just to make sure I understand this one, your survey sample, as well as if it was put on the ballot, it's just on registered voters, not necessarily the property owners that would be paying for this.
Correct,
So
yeah.
in your survey, you can have a bunch of renters that wouldn't ever have to pay this, saying, sure, yeah, charge the property owners.
Yeah. And you have to do it that way, because that's who's going to vote. We can't say, well, the voters are only going to be property owners. So we have to say, what's the perception among all of your voters here? And that's why we also just do voters and not just residents, because it's like, well, that resident isn't going to vote, so I don't care about their opinion as much as I do about a voter's opinion. So yeah, it does include homeowners and renters and all demographics in between.
I think schools should be the most beautiful things in a county because it's a reflection of our county. But at the same time, how could we even entertain this with what we've gone through for the last year? There's no trust. I absolutely would, I would pay it, but I remember when the bond issue happened, I was going door to door because we were getting a gym, and we had fundraised for 10 years for that gym. And we were vested in wanting to have that happen. And we went out in that community and door to door, signing, whatever, we got the 61% we needed. We got to repair some damage here. I wouldn't go for it. I mean, at this current, there's no trust. There's no trust, and I'm really saddened by that, because I really want our schools to look great. I am tired of walking down a hallway with rotted walls and pipes that I have to have the water run for 30 seconds, otherwise it's brown. I'm tired of it, and I would love to see our kids have what they deserve, is beautiful schools, because that's what they deserve. But I don't trust. There's no trust, and I'm speaking for one. I'm one teacher, but I'm sure many feel that way. Sorry.
Any questions? Any other questions? Chris?
Good day, Mr. Chairman, fellow board members. Chris Howard, County Board of Supervisors. I want the board to be aware, and it appears that maybe this discussion hasn't been had, and clear communications from both the city and the county haven't occurred. That seems obvious at this point in time. What I do want you guys to be aware of is in January, both the City Council and the Delaware County Board of Supervisors passed unanimously a similar type survey to go out to the public for a tax assessment, sales tax assessment specifically for public safety. The county and the city have not done this they haven't done it in any recent memory of anybody who's on the county board or city council. Public safety has suffered tremendously in this community for quite some period of time. You just have to talk to our police department and sheriff's department, our probation department, our DA, our jails to know the issues that are twirling around these issues. And I'd hate to see education and public safety pitted against each other on a November ballot. Both issues are equally needing at this point in time in our community. But at the same time, be aware that a public safety initiative in this county is likely to roll forward with voter approval and sentiment similar to the survey that was just conducted here. We're looking for that feedback now and expect results next month. It might come out similarly, we don't know yet. But what we do know is that it is likely if two tax-based initiatives were to appear on the November ballot, odds are both would likely lose. As you're aware, we are a very conservative county, as pointed out, and odds are they both won't pass. So just my opinion, but take that into account as you guys are deliberating tonight on this, whether or not to move forward.
Thank you.
If I may?
Sure, please.
If the survey hasn't gone out, I would request or suggest, recommend that one of the questions tests two measures on the same ballot. So, hey voter, here's the safety sales tax that we're doing. The school district is also considering it. If they're both on the ballot, would you vote for one, the other, both, or neither? That's a question that we always ask. Had I known, we would have included it here, because that gives you some pretty good direction as to whether or not, one has a good chance or both can go together or neither, whatever the case may be. 2016, we had Shasta College, Shasta High School District, an elementary district, and the city of Reading, 4 different taxes that folks were looking at. And 3 of the 4 actually ended up passing in Shasta and Reading. So it's not just said that they can't go together, but if I was advising you, I would say, hey, make sure that survey consultant is asking that question, because that would be really valuable for both parties.
With the sales tax, wouldn't that burden also be shared with tourists?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what type of sales tax. Depends on if they're asking for TOT or sales, yeah, we try.
Do you know what kind of sales tax are you asking for? Is it a TOT or is it?
No, it's TOT measure just passed last year. That was for the harbor increase. This is specifically a sales tax. What is being considered for the city county initiative is about 1 cent increase.
Right. So that would be shared by the tourists and.
Yeah, anyone who buys something in Delaware County would pay.
Could we, and this is to Mr. Harris, have a conversation at the level of administration with whoever at the county and city are working on this, so we can kind of coordinate this a little bit?
So what I would probably recommend, and I didn't know that they were moving forward, and thank you, Chris, for the notification earlier today. I think it would be, we hadn't heard from the city and county that they were proposing anything. So I would really recommend maybe putting together a 2 by 2 to come together and talk about what that looks like. 2 city council, 2 board of supervisors, 2 school board members, to meet and just have a conversation.
Okay. Any other questions?
I just wanted to say my biggest concern, I wasn't aware that we were limited to putting these kinds of measures on to an every 2-year basis. So it would be unfortunate to miss, I see the schools, they need the money as soon as we can get people behind it, and I would hate to have to wait for 2 years.
So that would probably be 4 years because you have better odds in a presidential election.
And I think it's not so much a limit to 2, is it takes a lot of money and work to just do a special election just for a bond. Like, we could do an election in 2021, but that's gonna cost us $50,000 to $60,000 to the county just to do one ballot measure. So it's more fiscally responsible to do it every 2 years on one of these general elections, so that it's easier for everyone, and also people don't get confused on, wait, I thought we just went to the ballot, like, or that we're going to a ballot. So that's, I think, why it's not really a limit, it's just it's easier for everyone.
Look, and in addition to the extra cost that, yeah, the district would be bearing the full cost yourselves, the threshold of approval is also higher.
Right.
You'd have to do a 2/3 supermajority. If you get
And not the qualified teachers, then that's a misuse of my tax dollars. And I think teachers should be paid what they're worth. And what they're getting is a year of nothing. And that's why I used to always vote for school issues. But I can't trust the House of Representatives, I can't trust the Sacramento people, and it's not looking very good for Delaware County because nothing's happening. And that's unfair to these qualified people who spend a portion of their life getting educated to do this. And I personally know it is not an easy job to be in a classroom with children that are struggling. And that's what I wanted to say. And I did understand what 13 was about. And I don't want to pay more tax dollars just to have it go someplace else anyway.
Yeah, it's a great point. Most people don't trust Sacramento, most people don't trust DC. That's why personally, even though I don't trust those agencies of government, this is the one type of measure that actually stays local. I mean, really all taxes should be local, like you just pay it and you get the benefit. And school bonds are paid locally and it stays locally, and Sacramento can't take the money and DC can't take the money. So, but, you know, again, this is the case that the district's gonna have to make as you kind of see if you can build the coalition and get the support that you need, and the teacher outstanding issue obviously is part of that discussion as well.
After a year, it's very difficult to have trust in anything anymore. And I've always voted for school issues. And I've always been supportive of teachers. I even worked hard when the fairgrounds needed money to pass that added tax. And I believe in what the harbor did was a great thing too. But just to have a pretty school and nice equipment, which is wonderful, they need to pay the people that educate the children and get on with it. After a year, it's too long.
Thank you. Any other questions? No other questions? All right, we'll move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see Nutritional Services Department presentation. Travis.
Kravitz, like Lenny.
Lenny Kravitz?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Deborah Kravitz, the Director of Delaware Unified School District's Nutrition Services. And I think it's been probably a couple years since I've done an official presentation about our program. So there we go. So nutrition services is really a lot more than just school lunch or school breakfast. And so I'd like to kind of highlight some of the programs that we're involved in. First of all, there's the school nutrition programs. Through the CDE Nutrition Services, we have the school breakfast program, the National School Lunch Program, and our Seamless Summer Option, which is our summer food program. In addition to the school nutrition programs, we are also a part of the child and adult care food programs. And within that umbrella of CACFP, we have the at-risk after-school supper and snack programs. And we are also feeding infants and toddlers out at Sunset Early Head Start. As recently as last summer, July, our charter schools are under AB 1871 are now required to provide at least one meal. So we are now vending meals to both USA and Castle Rock. And then finally, under the CDE and school nutrition programs, we have the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Grant Program. Currently, right now, it's Joe Hamilton and Margaret Keating, but I have applied on behalf of 6 school sites for next school year. And what that grant does, it allows us to provide fresh fruits and vegetables 3 times a week to these schools outside of the normal school meal programs. So some of the highlights and accomplishments that have happened over the last couple of years, I think probably first and foremost, the biggest one that's been the most impactful has been Community Eligibility Provision, or CEP. CEP basically allows non-pricing meal service option for schools and districts in low-income areas, and we qualify as a low-income area. It allows us to serve breakfast and lunch at no cost to students enrolled within our district. We started this 2 years ago with a pilot at Margaret Keeley, and it went really well. Last year, we expanded that to our K-8 schools and Sunset, Del Norte community. This year, we added Del Norte High School. So basically, every school in our district, all students eat for free, regardless of their income. The benefit about CEP, in addition to the fact that we no longer have to have household applications for free reduced meals, what we see is a kind of a level playing field. There's no more stigma associated with a child who is a free student or a reduced student. Everybody's equal. Every student can eat for free. The other thing that I think is really important is we spend a lot of time trying to recover money from students because we would never withhold a meal from a student, whether they were, regardless if they were a paid student or a reduced student. My staff was directed, we always give kids meals, whether they have the money to pay for it or not. Then we had the burden of going back and trying to recover that money that was owed to that particular school. And in the end, at the end of the year, my program cannot, because I'm a separate fund, cannot end the year in a negative balance. And so that money has to come somewhere. And for all those fees that were from student lunches or breakfast owed, we would then invoice the school, and the administrator would have to spend that money to recover that. But we also had a lot of staff, including school staff and my staff, trying to do that throughout the year, and so that's been eliminated. So CEP is just, in my eyes, probably the best thing this district has done in a long time with regard to school nutrition. So other highlights, our school breakfast program, I'm really happy to share that Mary Peacock School has a school-wide breakfast in the classroom program, and that actually started a year ago with 2 teachers, Paige, yay, and Lisa Sedgwick, which they were buddy classrooms, a 1st, 5th grade, were brave enough to try this out. And then at the end of last school year, Laura Hurd and staff and myself met, and everybody in the school wanted to do it. So we actually are doing breakfast in the classroom. And just to give you a little bit of an idea, breakfast participation at Mary Peacock was about 17%, maybe 20 on a good day. 20% of the students would participate in breakfast. We're now seeing close to 80%, and as high as 90% of the students are eating breakfast in the classroom every day. Laura Hurd had mentioned that she's seen a decrease in tardiness. There's also teachers indicating less classroom disruption due to hungry students. We're piloting a compostable fork. I had to put that in there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm really proud. Probably some of you may recall we eliminated styrofoam many years ago. Well, it's not many, but several years ago. And went to a plant-based, actually it's sugarcane-based fiber for our lunch trays. And we're doing the same thing with the plastic fork. So we're trying it out at Mary Peacock. We've been trying it at Persephone. We'll be trying it at Del Norte High School. Just another way to kind of be green and be considerate of our environment. And then we have special events. Like last week was actually National School Breakfast Week, and we did a really fun thing on Monday with yogurt bars with the kids. National School Lunch Program, we have Meatless Mondays. Again, another effort kind of from an environmental standpoint to reduce our carbon footprint and what goes into that. California Thursdays, celebrating California-grown foods. And I buy a lot of local food, or as much as I can. I buy beef from Ocean View Farms, which is in Fort Dick, I guess it would be, right? They're Fort Dick. And the Alexander Family Farms, Seabury Farms up in Klamath on Rockwell Hill, Ocean Air Farms, wherever I can, Bumiano cheese, wherever we can get local foods, we try to purchase them and feature them. We have salad bars in every school. And then we do have special events throughout the school year. Taco Tuesday's coming up. It will be this year on Tuesday, Cinco de Mayo, May 5th. So we're really excited. It lines up with Taco Tuesday. So we'll be celebrating that and making a big deal. But these are actually some pictures of some of our meals. This happens to be one of our California Thursday meals at the high school, and that chicken is from a local, not a local, but a California chicken they are, that we buy from. The other good news is over the last several years, we have seen participation in our school meal program grow. You can see here in 2014-15, and these, by the way, are meals claimed. So this is what we're actually claiming. It's not necessarily the amount of meals that we've prepared, because we don't necessarily sell all of those meals. But you can see we've had significant growth, and in 2018-19, we were over 806,000 meals produced out of 2 central kitchens in the school district. It's a lot of meals, and we expect that to be higher in 1920, I should say, this year. Okay, some other highlights and accomplishments. Last year was pretty brutal. We had not only a California Department of Education Nutrition Services Administrative Review, we also had a procurement review. And just to put that in perspective, the administrative review is about a 6-month process where the CDE is here for a week, reviewing our program inside and out. The procurement review is every 6 years. Oh, the administrative review is every 3 years, but they aligned together. So we were very lucky to have to do both of them. The procurement review really looks at our procurement policies and procedures and our activities, and that started in about July and ended in February. So that just tells you it was almost a 9 or 10 month process of doing and reviewing. And I'm really happy to say that both of those reviews, maybe 1 or 2 minor technical assistant kind of things that we had to address, but we successfully passed both of those reviews. We've purchased some new equipment. The newest and most exciting for us are 60-gallon twin steam kettles. That may mean nothing to you, but for my staff it means a lot. Because of the increased participation, we do make a lot of our meals from scratch. And those cooks are in there, and these are huge steam-jacketed kettles. The old ones were purchased, I believe, by Tom Cochran, and they came off of a naval ship at an auction. And I think they were, does that sound about right, maybe?
No, that's my dad.
I know it is, I'm just saying.
I'm just cheap as possible.
No, I mean, it was, you know what, and I think the plate on them said the 19, with like 50s on them. But the biggest part of it, they worked okay, but there was no mechanism. And so as you can imagine, trying to cook 700 pounds of ground beef in these things and stirring them, I'm really very grateful that we didn't have any kind of injuries. These are mechanized, they have stirring, tilting, they're just beautiful. If you're ever in the vicinity of the Crescent Kitchen, my staff would love to show them off. But I also tell you it was close to $100,000 by the time they were installed and purchased. And we worked with Steve and contractors to do that, so we're really excited. We have sharing stations in all our schools, and last year we upgraded our point-of-sale and application software to a cloud-based software, and I know Ryan was happy about that and his staff, so that we were not dependent on a server. This is kind of hard to see, but again, I want to highlight our summer food program and our community partnership. It's really tough, and if you can see over in the very far one over there, we have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 sites. Last year we had 14, this year we'll have 15. So the program has grown tremendously in terms of our summer food program. We know that there are a lot of our students who rely on school meals for their nutrition. And so when school is out, a lot of them, are hungry. So, go ahead. Next slide.
There we go.
Stuck. Oh, so this kind of gives you an idea, a little bit kind of taking the, being a little too aggressive with applying, but for 3 consecutive years, we were recognized by the Western region of the U.S. Department of Agriculture for our summer food program. In 2016, as an outstanding summer meal partnerships with our community partners, 2017 for reaching rural, tribal, and underserved, and in 2018 for raising community awareness. This is just a little collage of summer. It's really active. We start the Monday school gets out and we run all summer long, I should say 8 weeks. That gives us a week to change gears and get ready for school to start.
Ah, goodness gracious.
So what's in the works? There's a lot I probably haven't even shared with you, but a couple that I want to highlight. We are in the middle of, we're just starting what's called a food recovery, food waste reduction project. I don't know if you know, but there are probably close to 4 million pounds of food, good food, that's wasted and lands in our landfill every year. We are working with the food recovery coordinator of Donato Community Food Council to recover unused food from our school meal programs. To date, almost 1,600 pounds of food have been donated. We're averaging about 100 pounds a week out of our central kitchen at Crescent. And it is twice weekly. We plan to expand to our high school kitchen, and I just met right before this meeting with Meredith Knowles, who is the grant recovery, food recovery grant coordinator, and we're now talking about how we can expand that to our sites at our K5 or K8 sites. We are also involved in the collection of vegetable scraps and food trimmings from our kitchens for use in composting at local community gardens and school gardens. We are also, it was interesting, my staff called me over a while back and said, you know, we're really sad because high school students are going right from the line and they'll take maybe 1 or 2 things that they want and the rest of it just goes like this into the trash can. So I sent a little blurb over to the administration